shrimp in India, when it's exported, it's earning about 30,000 crores. Purely the one item called shrimp is earning 30,000 crores. That one number, and that being the second largest agri export of the country. Imagine a farmer cultivating this, and this one pond could have anywhere between 10 to 15 lakhs worth material in the pond. And overnight, if the farmer were not to really monitor these machines properly, overnight he could lose everything. You got to feed enough 45 to 48 degree temperature environment in the middle of the day with the one PM. Imagine in a completely 99% humid environment, the 45 to 48 degree temperature, you have to go around in a water body like we can feel. It is
very tedious, absolutely tedious. Yes.
In the middle of the night, for example, if one of this aerator were to stop for more than 10 minutes, this particular sensor that we have, it sends out, calls the farmer. He's woken up from sleep and he's alerted to a potential disaster. Today we are charging about 200 rupees per acre per month.
That's it.
That's it. It's like Tata Sky because that's easily understood by all Indians.
That's a subscription model.
Subscription model.
The AI is telling you, okay, so shrimp is under tremendous stress. Even if you feed, it won't take the feed. So this is the time to harvest. So farmers always think that, okay, if I raise this particular shrimp to 25 grams, then I'll get better money. But you are at exactly around 18 grams. So you might get less money. But if you didn't harvest that particular at 18 grams, then you will start losing money.
And we also ensure that this small farmer, this 1 acre, 2 acre farmers, is sitting on par with the large enterprises which have 20,000, 30,000 hectares of farms. These are actually large conglomerates, right? And now our farmer, our Indian farmer, is competing directly with all these conglomerates.
Hello and a very warm welcome to everybody. It is my sheer pleasure and privilege to get talking with the three co-founders of Aqua Exchange. These are these four co-founders. One of them actually is in Ecuador right now as we speak. They've actually put farmer at the center of every conversation that I've had with them off the record in the camera over the past 40 minutes. This kind of farmer centricity is extremely fascinating. I'm actually here in the heart of Vijayawada as we speak right now, in this sort of beautiful area with this water around me everywhere. I think it's a good idea to begin this conversation by understanding what really is aquaculture. What does it really mean in operational realities? Pawan, I think it's a great idea to begin the conversation with you. Here is Pawan, there is Kiran, and there's Hemsundar. What I like about them is that there's this raw, unfiltered energy cut from the same cloth. Pawan, beginning our conversation with aquaculture, I think that's a good starting point for this, that how many people in this country to actually understand what aquaculture in reality means from a potato perspective, and not just the headline item coming in the budget of the finance minister, that this will be aquaculture contribution to the GDP.
Sure. I think that's a great point to start, Shreya. But first of all, welcome to the shrimp world
Thank
from
you.
all of us here. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thank you.
All right. And it's a fascinating world. First of all, to set the context here, I think a few numbers would actually provide the right context. Shrimp in India, when it's exported, it's earning about 30,000 crores. Purely the one item called shrimp is earning 30,000 crores. That one number, and that being the second largest agri export of the country. This kind of fact will put it into context, into perspective.
Incredible.
Right? And such a huge enterprise, as you rightly said, a very small part of the population understands this. Because when we interact with different ecosystem players, we get to speak of this. And there's one more fact I would like to point out here is the fact that as a ministry, fisheries ministry itself got patented only in 2018. Right, at an international level. So the focus definitely for the right reasons has shifted into this, and we are all thankful for that. There's also other aspect of it. If you look at it from farmer's perspective, if a farmer were to cultivate a regular kind of crop like a paddy or wheat, they could stand to earn about anywhere between 25,000 rupees for paddy to 50 to 60,000 rupees for wheat per acre per year. And that's in a good crop condition. Considering everything works in his or her favor, the farmer's favor, right? The same thing in crops like aquaculture, for example, especially in shrimp, you could earn 10 times that.
Wow.
Right? That's the main reason why there is kind of attraction towards this. There is economic incentive for a farmer to kind of cultivate this. And that's the reason why India, by sheer strength of the farmer's determination, has built such a large empire or enterprise in this.
This is like a huge economic opportunity that we are talking about.
Sure.
But this can only come on the back of technical know-how, right? Just having a pond or this beautiful natural resources that Andhra Pradesh is bestowed with itself can't solve for it, right?
Sure.
So what did this team of four people bring to the table for the farmer?
Right. So before we get to what we offer, I think we have to also set the context regarding the farming itself, right? For example, what you see around here, these are all shrimp ponds. This is where the actual shrimp are grown. The farmer kind of leaves what we call seed into this water. That event is called stocking. And from that day onwards, the farmer cultivates the shrimp for about 120 days, roughly give or take. And in that 120 days is where the shrimp grow into the larger sizes and add economic value. Now, in this 120 days, it is actually precision farming that you need to do for you to get the right economic results.
Precision farming.
Precision farming is what is required because earlier, before companies like Aqua Exchange came in, right, the farmers used to do it by their own sheer hard work, right, where a farmer would live and kind of literally spend all his time here monitoring every small aspect of the ponds and water. That's how they could get to accurate results and grow the shrimp in a proper way and to get the economic value out of it. However, when you're trying to scale it up, right, that approach might not always work because a farmer can only take care of so much of his or her ponds, right? So when we came in, the goal was to see how a farmer can scale up, right, and have the same kind of results and same kind of precision in the entire farming so that all the right SOPs, the standard operating procedures, are followed, but at scale. So if you see a kind of a farm around here, this could have about roughly about 40 to 50 ponds. And in all 50 ponds, if a farmer has to get the same activity done in a similar fashion day in, day out, what needs to be done? And that's where technology comes into play. A small example again here, if you see all the machines behind you, which are churning continuously, churning the water. Now, these machines are called aerators. These aerators are actually infusing oxygen into this water because the shrimp living in the water, they are actually cultivated at a density which is higher than the natural density that you find in regular ecosystems. For example, if you take 1 acre of water and put in about 5,000 shrimp into that, they can live peacefully with the regular oxygen available. However, it's not economically viable for farm, right? So what the farmer does, they cultivate anywhere between 1 lakh to 1 lakh 20,000 shrimp per acre,
Wow.
right? That naturally means they do not have enough oxygen from the regular oxygen content in the water. So for that reason, these machines continuously run to infuse additional oxygen into the same water. Now
That is the intervention which you guys have provided.
yes,
Machines.
because this machine has to run for 16 hours continuously, and even if one machine stops for more than a couple of hours, it is going to adversely affect the health of the shrimp. And if it's more than 3 to 4 hours, basically all the shrimp will die. So imagine a farmer cultivating this, and this one pond could have anywhere between 10 to 15 lakhs worth material in the pond. And overnight, if the farmer were not to really monitor these machines properly, overnight he could lose everything. You would see dead shrimp floating in these ponds,
Oh,
right? Now that is where we come into picture because it's a high risk for the farm, right? So what companies like us do, what we have done, we have now started monitoring all these aerators continuously with IoT devices, sensors. What does the device do? It continuously monitors the aerator and lets the farmer know whether it's on, off, at what level it's functioning, etc. That's data. And in the middle of the night, for example, if one of this aerator were to stop for more than 10 minutes, right? This particular sensor that we have, it sends out a call to the farmer. He's woken up from sleep and he's alerted to a potential disaster. So he's given sufficient kind of response time where he can come and he can kind of do a corrective action. He take up a corrective action, and that's what companies like us do.
so, Pawan, we were talking about the Aqua infrastructure that you have built. I'm sure there are various components to it. And we have actually built a solution which is plug and play. So, most agri-tech solutions are basically aimed at changing the farmers here. That you had to change the way they work, right? But here, I think what I'm understanding, it is embedded in the way they already work. So, I was just talking to them and I actually got to know that a farmer is away from this completely. And from his house on the app, he's actually seeing that these aerators are on or not. That is a kind of IoT capability that they have built. You can actually be in the US and also manage and look at your farm. So, what really is monitoring in the aquaculture farmlands?
Shrimp farming or any aquaculture farming is a very sensitive of the animals are sensitive to the environmental temperature. So naturally, for a farmer, if you look at this from this farming and profitability perspective, there are a lot of risk factors which are kind of coming into play when he's farmed, and the risk factors are causing the loss for the farm. So when we started looking at this farm, we're all engineers, we don't have Eastern farm over, right? We all got into this after kind of, thinking of aquaculture sector. So we went to the farm. We started understanding why they call it a risky endeavor. We started classifying the risk into various aspects. One of the key areas space where we went and we saw the entire operations is what is called aeration. Okay, continuation of aeration. So this particular activity that you see around, you have to continue every day for 6 minutes without any. Now, for a farmer, the only way that he or she would do it aswa is by being physically present here, especially throughout them. Naturally, see, even in a 120-day period of farming, for 110 days, if we could do it also, not human capacity. There are a few days where you have
That's
to
what
be you have your own worst to be a family, cook on the emergency. Even in those week or 10 days, will that be okay? The rest would quit. Then we said, okay, let's try and solve this problem for farmer. That is where the first product that they created called Powermon Big Gap. In fact, you'd like to really place on record here that the idea came from a farm. Okay, right? And most of the kind of things that we have done here, the ideas came from farm. So one of the core beliefs that we have is if we keep our ears firmly to the ground, right? If we kind of, are receptive to what our customers are talking about, we kind of can get products which really fit their needs. And from one such need came this product called Palm, where today all the irrigation activity is monitored by IoT device, and it gives real-time information to farmers wherever they are progress. This one activity is helping farmers to stay at home, spend time with family, and still be not worried about their car. Today, if even one of the roughly 2 lakh 20,000 aerators that we have monitored, right, across India,
2,20,000.
that's right, across all these aerators that we are monitoring, even if one of them stops to do, right, farmer gets a phone call. He or she is woken up from sleep, and they're alerted to a prediction disaster, and they're giving sufficient time, right, to kind of rectify the problem. One other data point I'd like to place is chill date. Aqua Exchange has made more than 3 crore phone calls to farming.
Wow.
3 crore phone calls. That's the intensity of it there. That's the kind of level of that kind of intensity with having the farmers vision. Now, once you do that, the farmer gets in situation where he or she says, okay, now I have a reliability in my pan. One aspect of my risk stepping. Then basically, what is the next problem? The next problem was how do I feed my shrimp in a consistent manner day in day, every day, and how do I have the reliability that the person was doing the task of? Earlier, this was a manual NDA. A person would actually get into a boat, go around the ponds like this, right, and they would feed by hand, right? Now, again, the working conditions are tough. Nobody used to bring here. The working conditions are really tough. You got to feed enough 45 to 48-degree temperature environments in the middle of the day with the 1 p.m. Imagine in a completely 99% humid environment, right? 99% relative humidity at a 45 to 48-degree temperature. You have to go around in a water body like this and feed. It is
Very
tough.
tedious, absolutely tedious. Yes.
So naturally there will be slip ups in that process. Similar thing during winter at around 8-9 degrees temperature. Again, you're supposed to go on and feed and things like that. So the working conditions are tough. Given that there will be naturally inefficiencies or inaccuracy in the data. Again, we took up that as a task, and we then built automatic cables, robotic cables, which then are automated with activity, human activity, and they do it day in day out when they're all solar powered.
Oh,
They do not have any manual intervention required in terms of charging, etc. They run, and these things run even to 4 days without any kind of sunlight. There is a redundancy built into it. Now, given that asking, another activity of farming has been made more consistent and more active. So, in such a manner, we have built almost a suite of about 17 products here, taking each of the farming risk factors, and we try to solve the current harm. In all this, the key concept to be noted is the fact that all of these products have an inherent ROI with an investment. When I talk about ROI, it's like this. If a farmer is supposed to spend 1 rupee on a particular technology, he or she needs to see that they're actually benefiting by these 2 to 3 years. And the time period for that typical businesses, and we speak of any business, if you are a technology company selling to enterprise, you speak of 3 to 4 year ROIs. That works on the fly.
yes.
However, in farming, key point we need to keep in mind is the farmer's kind of working time period is always 1 crore. That has this idea.
That is,
Yeah.
yeah.
So farmers work kind of time period is only 1 crore. So any technology which cannot provide the ROI within 1 crop will not work. So the other aspect is not just a technological solution. A technological solution that fits the topic. It's economically well.
That's true.
So in our case situations right now, we basically work in a model where every technology has less than 1 month's ROI.
That is fascinating. Here, there are farmers coming up with problems and they are escalating that feedback back into the product and solving it with technology solutions. 17 products have been built to solve for operational minute problems of the farmer to make their life extremely feasible as part of their working activity every day. The second aspect I want to understand is basically that how do you also then, when you create this shrimp out of this pond, then what happens? We have taken care of the monitoring aspect. We have ensured that the product is great. We get that product. Now, what happens after that?
Shrija, the key point to note is, till now we've only spoken about the farming bit. So it could be a good farmer or a great farmer and most of the precision coming into your farming and we could produce or you could farm in a better manner. But the economic value really comes to the farmer only if he's able to harvest it in a better way and then sell at a better. So right, that is also crucial element. Till that is sold and the money is in your hand, it's not the way, okay? Cycle is not done. So from that aspect of it, what we also they realize the ground level is India as a farming, aquaculture farming kind of country, it's a great farming ethos on a great farming ecosystem. Right? They farm the best possible shrimp. However, one challenge we face is the harvesting and post-harvest kind of infrastructure. Yeah. Right? Where we are losing out a little bit of value for the produce during this process. How? Because most of it is manual today and it is not actually recorded in terms of what is the quality parameters that are there. What we've also done is identifying the need bar. We've also built harvesting and post-harvest infrastructure, where today you can track exactly which where the shrimp is being harvested, at what time is it harvested, how long it take from for this harvested shrimp to really go through the logistics infrastructure, how much time it is spent on the road. The vehicle race stop at some point and spend half an hour per cheap vehicle ground. And that's recorded. Temperatures are retarded, right? All the way till it goes to the processing plant gets processed. Right? Today, if we go to a restaurant and if you are kind of, let's say, VP sheet, you want to know that that's a good quality sheet. You want to be sure that, if you were to question the chef or the restaurant, you want an answer from. That basically ties into what we call verticality.
Traceability.
Why? Because you want to trace the product.
So you have basically taken the playbook of a typical e-commerce logistics for different products and transported that to the entire shrimp economy. Can you say that? And that is where the technology and the smarts of people like you all coming.
So we started building all the bits and pieces which are required for the farmer, to hyper. We Hemsudha can also add more to it when I speak about the other activities like finance and insurance paper. Because till now we've been speaking about the one aspect of, right? But there is also, let's say, if anybody starts a business, what do they do? They actually would create a DPR, cost code, and go to a bank and get financing. Farming doesn't have the luxury.
So Himsita, before I come to finance and insurance, I want to understand this. He spoke about the harvest and the post-harvest infrastructure. So how do you also make sure that the harvest, if it's come out, is sold at a good price abroad? How do you make sure that the price discovery is better for the farm? How are you making sure?
So I think what Pawan mentioned about bringing in the traceability and also implementing better harvestry practices and tracking all the activities through the post harvest value chain, even the pattern. So today we are putting the way the pattern gets done, and we have preferred suppliers that many of the large buyers, exporters, are basically. So today we are not there yet, but our endeavor is that we're today in the light of the European FTA deal community and the focus on diversifying export markets to other geographies other than the US largely, because today about 50% of the shrimp getting exported out of India goes to Bangladesh. And now there is a need for us to diversify further into other markets and into the European Union, which itself can become as big a bigger consumer as the US, basically, right? And Europe has a lot more, stringent quality checks and testing that they put the Indian shrimp to for any guy. And now the industry is at an inflection point where they have to really uphold their systems and implement certain checks and balances. And while I say that, you would also know that, typically there are global renowned certification agencies like BAP, Best Aquaculture Practices, which is very predominant in the US, and Aquaculture Stewardship Council, ASC. And these certification agencies are the ones which kind of certify the shrimp that gets sold in the retail markets, basically in the US and the Europe.
Kiran, talking more on the monitoring aspect, I think Pavan did give a sense on the aerators and the power mon. But what else goes into the monitoring aspect?
If you see the water, right? So water, it is not only having a shrimp inside it. So it is having a lot of plankton which requires oxygen, and there will be useful plankton, there will be harmful plankton for the shrimp. So we should keep observing it. So okay, before Aqua Exchange, what farmers are doing, so farmers observe by the color of the water, right? So the color, whatever the plankton is there, what that plankton will give you the color of the water. If it is blue, you will have a some kind of algae. If it is green, it has some kind of different kind of algae. So by seeing the color, so then only farmer will be able to understand. So that means it's an after effect. So once the color changes and everything changes, then you are understanding it's an after effect. So it is very difficult to for any farmer to revamp the pond, and it is very difficult, right? So then what we have done is we have built an AI. So where you take just a drop of water and take a photograph that particular water under a microscope. So we built an AI. So where just upload that picture into our app. So our app will generate immediate report of what is there in your water.
So that's fascinating use of AI
Yeah.
in
So
agri
what is
and
there?
magic.
Yeah, what is there in the water? So it you beforehand the farmer gets an understanding. Okay, what will happen if I not intervene now within a week? So that's where we are creating some kind of insurance to the farmer. If you take the shrimp and put it under a microscope, so we'll dissect one of the shrimp of 1 lakh. So we'll dissect and keep observing every week. So that gives us how much stress it is into. So
That is the level of precision that we are talking
yes,
about.
that's what the precision farming what Pawan is
So
talking.
every shrimp is being monitored.
It's not every shrimp, it's sampling of shrimp. So every week farmers does the sampling. So in that sampling, we select a shrimp and put it under a microscope and observe how it is taking whether the feed, whatever we are feeding it, right? So whether the feed is getting into the shrimp properly, whether it is eating feed or plankton. So it can eat mud also. So all these things we can observe. So based on that, you can adjust everything for the next coming week. So you take pictures of this and you actually get got it. And that's the hepatopancreas. There you see the black ones there, and the next one is what you call that goes into the microscope. From that you get to understand the health of the animal. Then this small line that you see is the gut through which the feed is passing, whatever it's eating. We try to understand if it's under stress or not by looking at these from the microscope.
So we just heard the founders at Aqua Exchange, but now it is time for the investor perspective. Investor perspective with me is Anvesh at Endiya Partners. Now, Endiya Partners, one of the first institutional investors to write the first check for Aqua Exchange. Joining me now is Anvesh. Anvesh, it's my sheer pleasure and privilege to have you here. We had a great sort of conversation with the Aqua Exchange founders. One could see the camaraderie between the founders, cut from the same cloth and really speaking in the same language. What really came through was their sheer passion for aquaculture and the understanding about the farmer space. I want to understand from you that once one speaks with the farmers, they really come across being that they really have been exposed to a lot of agri-tech products. And it's not the first time that they've been exposed to that. But sometimes they also feel cheated or they don't really understand that. What was it about Aqua Exchange which sort of told you that they perhaps get the pulse of the farmers very, very well?
Yeah. Thank you for having me again. I think with Aqua Exchange, you're right. I think farmers, especially in this particular industry and even other sectors of agriculture, they've had a lot of tech solutions thrown at them with no real understanding of what they're expected to get from it, what their ROI or return on investment would look like. I think for us, what gave us confidence with Aqua Exchange particularly was the fact that the founders spent 2 years living with the farmers, really understanding how the whole sort of ecosystem works, all the way from, how do you sort of start a shrimp farm to what sort of goes into, having a successful shrimp farm, and who are the other players in the supply and value chain. And sort of truly living the life with the farmers gave them sort of, I guess, first degree insights into what problems they face, what is the most critical need for the farmers. Do they need a tech solution that doesn't really help them much, or do they need a solution that instantly sort of creates ROI, right? Where is the biggest pain point? And sort of having spent that time, they've come out with products that really mattered for the farmers, right? They didn't try to push fancy technology, right? But instead told them, hey, here's a simple solution that you can just plug in, and you don't have to live on the farm anymore. You can go home and you can get a message when something happens, right? So what these guys have done is, with the IoT devices that they've put in place at these farms, I think they were able to capture a lot of that data. How often, are you feeding the shrimp, and what sort of inputs are going in? Where are these inputs being bought from? Are you using antibiotics in your farms? Are you monitoring your pond health? Right? Having access to that data gives the confidence to an underwriter to be able to say, okay, I can lend X amount of capital to these guys, because they have everything else in place to be able to make sure that at the end of the 4 or 5 month period, you actually see good yield in terms of the output, right? And the risk becomes much lower for them, and that's how it also brings your credit cost down substantially. So before these technology products were being adopted, you saw farmers having about 60-65% success rates. With Aqua Exchanges, IoT devices, and the farm monitoring solutions in place, we've seen yields go up north of 85% to 90%, right? So you see significant improvement in yield, which in turn improves the profitability for these farmers on a per acre basis. So I think that gave us the confidence to back them, that they really understood what the farmers needed. But from day one, the vision was always to build an ecosystem around it, right? This is how you start, and you win the farmers' trust this way. And once you win the farmers' trust, they're willing to trust you and adopt more solutions that you're offering. So yeah, I think that we've seen that evolution happen over the last 3 years. So that's what really gave us the confidence to back these founders.
Thanks for that, Anvesh. Gives a clear understanding. On the ecosystem, what kind of ecosystem are we looking at? I mean, at the center, in the heart of it is the IoT, the sensors and devices that aqua farming one can understand. One leg goes into the fintech product. But what really is the end game that we're talking about? There was one mention of being a protein company, and perhaps that really is the ambition. But to me, it sounds like more in the path of a fintech product, as we see on Angry Thing. Am I wrong in that thinking?
Yeah, I wouldn't say fintech is the ultimate vision, Shija. I think the ultimate vision is to build a technology platform for animal protein. I think that's the long-term vision that the company has. You're starting with shrimp, you'll expand into sort of other species of seafood like fish, for example, right? Tilapia and a few other species. So when we look at what is relevant across this, I think from a components that go into the value chain is pretty much the same, right? You have the farmers, they need inputs, which is obviously seed to start with, and then over the course of the cycle, the crop cycle, you have inputs that go in, which could be feed and medicine and other things to maintain pond health, etc. And at the end, you need someone to have a purchase agreement with you, with the farmer, right? You need to be able to sell all your produce. And how do you enable that, right? You have marketplace models, yes, where you have a middleman who comes in, buys at a low price from you and sells at a higher margin to somebody else upstream in the value chain. But what Aqua Exchange has done is saying, okay, we have the connects with the upstream value chain as well, right? So we can offer you harvest as a service. So if you're borrowing money from a lender, right, we can guarantee that your output is going to be purchased at the end of the day, so you can repay your lender and keep your profit, right? And then when you go further up the value chain, then value added services start coming into the picture. So depending on who your end buyer is, right, if you're exporting to the US, then you don't export the shrimp as is to the US, right? So they want it to be deshelled and deveined and cleaned, and certain amount of processing to be done, like breading or cooking. So ready to eat shrimp becomes very important if you're going to market it in countries like the US. And even within the domestic market now, we've seen an emergence of delivery services that have come up. So when you think about domestic consumption as well, like as a source of protein, shrimp is gaining share, right? And fish is gaining share. So there is going to be domestic consumption demand as well. And across overlaying all of this is the concept of traceability, right? You want to know that what's on your plate is uh, unadulterated and doesn't have things that are not supposed to be in there, right? People want organic. People don't want any meat that has antibiotics injected into them or stuff like that. So that's where the data layer that these guys have built comes into play, and they're partnering with these accreditation services, right? Which these organizations that label this as okay, this has been certified that this has, it's biologically say pure and secure, right? So you need to be able to get data all the way from the particular pond level, right? So to know that okay, this is where the seed has come from, these are the inputs that have gone into the farm, and we've monitored the biomass in the pond to ensure that there are no antibiotics that have been deployed, right, or been used. And from the farm, where does it go through the value chain, right? uh, all the way from transportation in cold storage trucks to where they're stored in cold storage facilities to which processing plant they've gone to be processed. Having that entire data lineage for the one particular shrimp will be able to you'll be able to certify it and say okay, this is something that is certifiably like pure and secure, and we have full visibility on its entire lineage all the way from the seed stage, right?
That's
So
so fascinating just to listen to it.
yeah.
So tell me one thing, Anvesh, that on the face of it, it looks like one shrimp. How big can a company like this become? And I mean, how do VCs like you do it in terms of really seeing beyond what is visible? Like you said, Shrija, from the beginning, technology platform, this traceability. So it's basically a combination of engineering plus art.
I'm not sure we can take any credit for that. I think it's the founder's vision right from day one. I think as people who've lived this for a long time, they understand what it takes to build something in this space. And for us, it's about ensuring that we're backing the right founders at the end of the day, right? We have to believe in their execution capabilities. Can they build something meaningful in this sector? And that applies across all companies. But in this particular case, I think for us, the industry is huge, right? India is the second largest exporter of shrimp globally and one of the biggest players in the aquaculture space in general. So the signs are there, protein demand is shifting from wild capture to farmed aquaculture sort of products, right? And shrimp itself is a $40 billion industry, right? Indian shrimp market I'm talking about, right? Forget global. And how do we then create efficiencies in this market? I think that's what at the heart of it is that's the problem we're trying to solve, right? And there's also, again, Aqua Exchange has also started growing outside India, right? We've started selling the technology products to enterprise scale farms in Ecuador, Madagascar, Saudi Arabia, to name a few. So there's opportunity outside of India as well. But within India, I think the first pain point is how do we increase efficiencies? We don't have enterprise scale farms in India. So here you're dealing with farmers that have small farm holdings. You're talking about a few acres at best, right? But to be able to virtually consolidate all of these small holdings into through the use of technology into a large enterprise scale operation, being able to aggregate demand from all of these farms helps you provide and pass on a lot of those cost savings in terms of sourcing demand for feed and seed onto the farmers. So you start there, increase efficiencies, build that platform, and soon now as you go up the value chain, you give farmers the ability to have a say in the pricing of their produce at the end of the day, right? I think over the long term, we'll see a lot of this evolve for the company. And once you apply this to shrimp, I think the next phase is to apply it to fish and other sources of protein, because while they're all different animals, I think ultimately, if you look at the value chain, it's relatively largely similar. So the applicability sort of is quite apparent across different sources of animal protein. Yeah.
Yeah, so this can actually become very, very huge then. And I think what I'm also understanding is that, like for technology companies, like the way you talk about client centricity or the customer centricity, here I think it's more farmer centricity. It can only work when it sort of benefits the farmer ultimately. And I think the entire ecosystem is sort of geared towards that. And Mish, tell me one thing that it's kind of rapid fire question that what are the tough conversations with the Aqua Exchange founders? Are there, if any?
How can we grow faster, right? I think that's always the question. I think they're the ones who live the day-to-day operations. We come in, we have certain, I would say, thoughts around how things can be done. But the reality is, I think at the end, we both have to sit down and discuss and understand the realities of the market. But a conversation is always about what can we do better? How can we accelerate our pace of growth, right? I think, but again, I wouldn't say it's an argument, but it's always one conversation that we have.
Okay, and what is the one word that comes to your mind when you think about a company like Aqua Exchange in India's portfolio?
Unique, right? So, it's unlike any of the other companies in the portfolio. Again, in the truest sense, right? Because this is something that's impacting livelihood of farmers and sort of helping them live a better life at the end of the day, right? So I think it's quite exciting to be part of such a company's growth journey. Yeah.
Thank you so much for spending your time and energy for this conversation. Thank you so much,
No,
Ankush.
thank you for having me. My pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, we get a ringside view of Aqua Exchange, a company born out of a structural inefficiency in one of India's most critical yet under-digitized sectors, aquaculture. For decades, aquaculture has operated in fragments. Farmers relied on intuition over data. Supply chains so opaque, input quality was inconsistent, and access to formal finance remained limited. Despite being one of the fastest growing food segments globally, the ecosystem lacked a unified digital backbone. But inefficiency was only the surface problem. At its core, aquaculture is a high risk, high variance business. Disease outbreaks, water quality fluctuations, feed management, and market volatility can wipe out entire cycles of production. And yet, decision making has historically remained reactive rather than predictive. Aqua Exchange saw this early. They understood that digitization in aquaculture was not just about connecting buyers and sellers, it was about building an intelligence layer for the entire value chain. A platform where farmers can access real-time insights on pond health, input optimization, and yield outcomes. Where financial institutions can underwrite credit based on data, not guesswork. Where the ecosystem moves from uncertainty to visibility. The journey required rethinking the category itself, from being seen as a marketplace to becoming a full-stack aquaculture operating system, from enabling transactions to enabling decisions. Backed by investors like Endiya partners, Aqua Exchange is not just solving for inefficiency. They are building the infrastructure for a data-driven aquaculture economy. Because in a sector where margins are fragile and risks are invisible, information is not just power, it is survival. And over time, it becomes scale.